Merry Christmas, 007.
I'm Sir Hilary Bray.
Oh, no, Mr. Bond. Respectable baronets from the College of Heralds do not seduce female patients in clinics. On the other hand, they do get their professional details right. The Beauchamp tombs are not in the Augsburg Cathedral, as you said, but in the St. Anna Kirche. Sir Hilary Bray would have known. A small slip. It takes more than a few props to turn 007 into a herald.
Take more than cutting off your earlobes, Blofeld, to turn you into a count.
I may yet surprise you, but I'm afraid that you have no surprises left for me. I know all about your mission, Mr. Bond. Your colleague, such a keen climber, such a brilliant conversationalist, before he left us.
You realize he reported where I am?
I doubt that. In any case, no one's going to come to your rescue. In a few hours, the United Nations will receive my Yuletide greetings. The information that I now possess the scientific means to control or to destroy the economy of the whole world.
And how many hundred millions do you want for your services this time, Blofeld?
This time? This time the price is of another kind. You'll be even more amused when you know what. In the meanwhile, I will keep you here as my guest. You'll be very useful in helping to convince the authorities that I mean what I say. And I'll do what I claim. Come, let me...
What are you? I'm Batman.
Sir.
My name is
Bond.
I'm Batman.
Knight Rider.
My name is Oliver Queen.
I'm Batman. James Bond. I'm Batman. I'm Batman.
I am the Green Arrow.
This is The Night Cave, the show covering everything related to Batman, James Bond, Knight Rider, and Arrow. And now, here's your host, Brian Thomas.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to an all-new episode of The Night Cave. My name's Thomas, Brian Thomas. Let me try that again. My name's Thomas, Brian Thomas. And I'm trying to do it a little George Lazenby, getting the kind of groove of that. Anyway, yes, I am your host. I just dropped my water, but you didn't really hear that, hopefully. Thanks for joining me. This is the show where we discuss everything related to Batman and James Bond movies, as well as Arrow and Knight Rider. I hope all of you have had a great week. I hope all of you are in the holiday spirit. If you're not in the holiday spirit, that's okay. I think this episode is going to be timely, one, because it is actually a Christmas movie. I'm kind of jumping ahead here. You saw the title. That's right. It is time for the On Her Majesty's Secret Service 50th anniversary episode and review. This one has been a long time coming. If there was anything that I would want to get to before year's end, I was like, you know what? This is one of those Bond movies that I really have never had a chance to talk about with anybody. And, well, no one's really here to, talk with me back and forth about it, and that's okay. But you guys, after you listen to this episode, I'd really love to hear what you think about this movie. I got a few comments on my last post about favorite moments and such, which we'll also get to later. But this is one of those Bond movies that I actually, I'll be honest with you, I watched this movie twice within a span of probably 2 days. And once the first time I was watching it, and it's obviously not the first time I've watched it before, but it's become a tradition in my household, and for me, because you can't watch it with your wife because, well, she's not into the James Bond movies so much. And the baby's just way too young to see this movie, even though it is PG. I still think it's a different kind of PG. So whenever she turns a teenager, I would say, then maybe she can start watching these James Bond movies. But nevertheless, though, I just felt like watching it twice because I was trying to get sometimes when I watch a movie, gotta be honest, I have other things that are going on. I'll put the movie on in the background. I'll put it on my iPad. I'll put it on my computer. I barely even turn on my TV nowadays. That's why I bought all my Bond movies and Batman movies all digital, just because I know I'm always like I can't just sit still. I have some kind of I have laundry to do. I have all the basic things that a loving husband and new dad has. And I was watching in the background. I'm like, man, you know what? I think because I only watch it maybe once a year, maybe twice a year at most, I felt like watching it again. And I gotta say, the second time, I actually just like really paid attention to it, and I'm like, man, there's just some things I totally forgot, and maybe things I have more respect for. Like I said, I've watched this movie many times. This is one of those Bond movies, like I said, that how do I say this? I think my opinion for this movie has probably changed the more I've watched it. One thing really hasn't, but like I said, jumping ahead here. So, if you haven't seen this movie on Her Majesty's Secret Service, well, let me say, you got to pause this episode, turn it on, watch it. You're in for a treat. It's not your typical James Bond movie. And that's not a bad thing. Actually, that's kind of a good thing in a way. And that's not to knock the other James Bond movies because, we all love our, Sean Connery movies. We all love our Roger Moore movies. We love our Pierce. We love our Daniel Craig Bond movies, even Timothy Dalton. But the one name that a lot of people forget, and if you're not a Bond fan, then chances are you probably have no idea who this actor is, Mr. George Lazenby. So, I always like doing this before I actually get a chance to review the movie. I always find some fun facts, and it's it's not rocket science. I go into IMDb and I'm like, oh, you know what? I really didn't know that. And actually, before I even started recording this episode, I was watching the documentary. It's from 2012. It's called Everything or Nothing, and it's like the story of James Bond, how Ian Fleming created James Bond, how James Bond came to be in the movies. They have interviews with the actors, and they actually had a really good interview with George Lazenby in this. And, it's some really interesting fun facts, and, I won't hold you guys up with this. Let me just go right into it. So, George Lazenby, this is the guy, I think you could call him the forgotten Bond. And, the story with this is that there was this guy in his 20s, give or take. He was from Australia. He's not from UK. Sean Connery said, after you only lived twice back in 1967, you know what? I've had enough. I'm moving on, and they're not paying me enough money, or I think they're treating me like crap. And when I say they, I talk about the producers, Harry Saltzman and Albert L. Broccoli. So what George Lazenby said, he was thinking is like, oh well, there's this guy, there's this James Bond. He can get whatever he wants. He can sleep with any girl. He can go into any parking spot and take it, and whatever it may be. And he's a high roller. So Lazenby really had no acting experience, which really is interesting about this. Does it show? I think it kind of does. So in order to get the role for this James Bond movie, here's what he did. He secured a suit ordered from an uncollected Sir Sean Connery. He bought a Rolex. He ended up getting a haircut just like him. And somehow he talked his way into a meeting with the producers Broccoli and Saltzman and the director Peter Hunt. He was saying, oh yeah, I've done films here and here and here. I've done films in Hong Kong and where else, and just trying to see, hopefully thinking, oh, the producers, they'll never find out that I'm picking all these rare locations. So after he was pretty much BSing and bluffing, he ended up saying he got a screen test, and then he confessed to the director Peter Hunt, saying, you know what, I made it all up. I'm not an actor. And the director said, you just strolled in here and managed to fool two of the most ruthless bastards in the business. You're an actor. And there you go. And that's how George Lazenby became James Bond. And, he, like I said, he's an Australian actor. As of 2019, he is the youngest actor to portray 007 at age 29 during filming. The rest of the actors and their ages in no particular order: Sir Sean Connery, 31. Sir Roger Moore was 45. Timothy Dalton was 40. Pierce Brosnan was 41, and Daniel Craig was 38. And let's keep going on with some more fun facts here. So another thing that I've always wondered, and I mean, we all know that, like I said, George Lazenby only did one Bond. When I was watching the documentary, Everything or Nothing, he was saying in the interview that, in other words, he made a friend, and this friend was saying, the producers are just going to use you and so forth. And at the time, it was an era where I guess you could say it was the hippie era, long hair, beards, and whatnot. And Lazenby showed up to the premiere of Her Majesty's Secret Service with long hair and a beard. The producers weren't happy about that. But according to the DVD documentary, some here are some other reasons. Lazenby's youthful cockiness rankled producer Albert R. Broccoli's nerves. One incident mentioned is Lazenby skiing down the slopes on his own, resulting in a broken arm and a moment of arrogance on Lazenby's part that spoiled a cast and crew party. Number 2, the notoriously harsh British tabloids writing up unfavorable stories about Lazenby and how he fails to measure up to Sir Sean Connery. There was times where Lazenby believed that the Bond film franchise was over in wake of more sophisticated movies like The Graduate and Easy Rider, and the tuxedo-clad secret agent was out of touch with the newly liberated 1970s. He mentioned that to his agent that he wasn't sure if he wanted to play Bond again even before the movie was released. It just things like this, and George Lazenby is, like I said, I don't think it has so much. Maybe it has something to do with age, but I've never understood what was going through his mind when he decided, you know what, I don't know if I want to play James Bond again. It's like, well, dude, you secured the role of a lifetime. You fooled the producers, and maybe it didn't. You're not sure, Sir Sean Connery. You're not Sean Connery. Nobody's going to be Sean Connery, and that's okay. You put in your own flavor to it. You put your own spin onto the character, and I think Lazenby, never really got that. I don't think, maybe he didn't read the books. Maybe he didn't know anything about acting, but if he would have at least, gotten the idea of, you don't have to follow in Sir Sean Connery's footsteps, and this is, like I said, the role of a lifetime, and this is just one of those once in a lifetime opportunities, and yeah, it got to his head. He suggested a couple of their fun facts here, and then I can actually get into a review. Lazenby suggested a scene where Bond skis off a cliff and opens a parachute. This idea was scrapped as the filmmakers lacked the resources to pull it off. However, because it sounds familiar, and yes it does, it was used in the opening for The Spy Who Loved Me in 1977. This features the only signature gun barrel sequence of all Bond movies in which Bond drops to one knee while shooting at the audience. It's also the only version of the sequence where the descending blood completely erases Bond's image, leaving only the red circle. The producers originally intended to explain the change of lead actors in this movie by saying that Bond had undergone plastic surgery because his old face was now too well known by foreign spies and terrorists for him to go undercover, but they decided not to refer to the change at all, and to minimize the public attention being paid to George Lazenby's replacing Sean Connery. So instead what they did is, right before the titles, Bond says directly to the camera, he breaks the fourth wall, as they say, "Listen to what happened to the other fella," and that's such a horrible George Lazenby. I can do Sean Connery, I can even do Roger Moore, but when it comes to George Lazenby, I got to really work on this. This is the last time that John Barry's original Dr. No arrangement of the James Bond theme would be used on screen. However, it would continue to be used in trailers, etc., as late as License to Kill in 1989. We'll cross some Batman references in here too. So this is actually Christopher Nolan's favorite James Bond movie, and he's the director of the Dark Knight trilogy. For those of you that don't know, that's okay. Many references can be found in Inception. He said, "What I liked about it and what we tried to emulate in this film is there's a tremendous balance in that movie of action and scale and romanticism and tragedy and emotion." Adam West, here's the real Bond trivia and Batman trivia. Adam West, a personal friend of producer Albert R. Broccoli, was offered the part of James Bond. West said that while he was very tempted, he ultimately turned it down, feeling the role should be played by an English actor. This is the first movie in the James Bond film franchise in which James Bond cries. He cried again in Skyfall in 2012. The motto in here, this is some more Bond trivia in here. It says, I'm going to try to pronounce this, Orbis non sufficit. It was given to Bond when he researches his own coat of arms before impersonating Sir Hilary Bray. It's Latin for "the world is not enough," which was used as a Bond movie title in 1999. This is the final movie in which the name of the actor who played James Bond appears below the title in the title sequence. It's the final time until For Your Eyes Only, Bond would be seen tossing his hat. He tossed it twice in this film. This is the first Bond movie in which 007 used skis. Yes, we will be talking about that. And this is the only movie in Eon Productions' film franchise with extensive scenes set explicitly during Christmas and New Year's holiday season. So if you ever want to get into an argument with somebody about what your favorite Christmas movie is, and you happen to say On Her Majesty's Secret Service, you got a perfectly good argument right there, because you know why? It is set during Christmas. And there, my friend, is you're one of the you're golden. Anyway, I was trying to go somewhere with that. Anyway, let's talk about the movie itself. Let's talk about what I liked. Instead of just doing a split, like I said last time on last week's episode, if you listened, I don't want to do a frame by frame, especially when it comes to reviews. I know I've probably done that in the past. I'm trying to avoid that. But I will go in order with certain things here, just saying this pre-title sequence. Okay, we have to get it out of our mind that with Sean Connery is not James Bond anymore. So when they do this pre-title sequence, first of all, you have a kind of a different James Bond theme. It's similar but different in a way to John Barry's other Bond scores, but I would say this is probably, and I think a lot of people would agree with me, that this is one of John Barry's best scores when it comes to James Bond. He had a lot of different themes going on here. Obviously, the On Her Majesty's Secret Service, you hear that from the very beginning as Bond's driving that Aston Martin into the beach. You hear the James Bond theme even when he's driving the Aston Martin when he's chasing the Mercury Cougar, which is actually being driven by Tracy. What I liked about this this movie is, of course, the 1969 Aston Martin DBS. You can never go wrong with an Aston Martin, especially if you're James Bond. I really liked how they introduced Lazenby. Now, I'm going to go on record here saying that Lazenby is my least favorite James Bond. I'll save the other part for the dislikes, but I will say that how they introduced him. This movie has some. I'm a sucker for cinematography when it comes to movies, especially Bond movies. Instead of just revealing his face right away, saying, "Hey, guess what? Sean Connery's no more. George Lazenby, smack dab in the face, close up. Here's your James Bond." No, they didn't do that. They kind of almost, I would say, kind of paid homage to Sean Connery, or they were just being very sneaky about it, and you would only see below his nose, probably pretty much his mouth, he'd light the cigarette. You would see him smoke it. He'd put his sunglasses down. He was wearing a hat at the same time, and they were being very sneaky about it. It wasn't until probably a couple minutes in, when he actually gets out of the car to try to save Tracy out of the ocean, that you actually see him. But it's not really like a particular close-up. It's him just taking off his jacket, taking off the gun, and then when he introduces himself, it's not like a Bond, James Bond. Like I said, it's a different kind. It's like, good morning, my name's Bond, James Bond. And then you get into something that I would say it's different from the Sean Connery era, and I don't want to compare, but sometimes I guess I'm going to be doing that because it's almost back to back with You Only Live Twice and On Her Majesty's Secret Service. And the fight sequences in this movie are, for lack of better terms, kick-ass, okay? I think I've said it before in the past about something I always get a good chuckle out of the first fight sequence out of On Her Majesty's Secret Service because of how George Lazenby throws a punch. He doesn't just throw a straight deck. He throws like this wide arm punch, and he puts his whole body into it. When he slugs the guy, especially in the ocean, he just winds up and goes like that, and he almost falls to the ground when he does. He's putting his whole body into it. I laugh my ass off whenever he does that. And he's flipping people, he's flipping the bad guys and such. It's a very physical Bond, which I really, really liked. I like I said, the cinematography. All the shots in this movie are in their own way. I wish I would have written down who the cinematographer is. I know people are yelling at me right now about it, but anyway, I got to keep moving on. Like I said, the fight choreography was amazing. The title, like I said, he does breaks the fourth wall. This never happened to the other fella. The title sequence, I think this is something that we definitely need to talk about here. Now, up until from Russia with Love, it was instrumental. Dr. No, obviously, was just the James Bond theme and Underneath the Mango Tree. But with this movie, let's see, Goldfinger, Thunderball, and You Only Live Twice all had like an actual song being sung. This one they went back to instrumental, and this is all John Barry, and this is what John Barry does best. When he does an instrumental song, obviously From Russia with Love, but this one he put his own. He created like a new theme, obviously the Honor Majesty Secret Service theme. Like I said, dun 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 dun, and it's dark, it's edgy, and it's got a great beat. And throughout this, you're not seeing like any pictures of George Lazenby, because they weren't doing that quite yet with James Bond. I think it wasn't up until the Roger Moore era when they actually started showing him in the background. I believe is The Spy Who Loved Me. Anyhow, you see, what I love about this is that you see little mini clips. Like, it's almost like going through, like, I guess it's like the hourglass, or if it's the martini glass, I can never tell. But you see pictures all the way going all the way back to Dr. No. You see Honey Rider. You see actually Dr. No. You see Emile Largo. You see some Bond girls in there. You see From Russia with Love. You see all kinds of things. And it's like they're paying homage, like I said, the previous James Bond. It's like, hey, remember, this is a James Bond film. We don't want you to forget about what happened in the past, but we're, at the same time that this is going to be a little different. What makes this Bond movie so interesting, I would say, is, and like I said, it's not your typical Bond movie, is that there is I would say, a love story. And whenever I think of love stories for James Bond, of course, I think of Casino Royale. Now, I will say that this love story probably isn't as not as much I don't want to say as much focus, but maybe the chemistry, I think, is maybe it's because of Lazenby. The actress Diana Rigg, who played Tracy Bond, she did a great job with it. Is she my favorite Bond girl? No, but I really liked her as a Bond girl. I liked what she brought to this part. And while we're talking about co-stars, let's talk about the supporting cast in this movie. Like I said, George Lazenby is not my favorite James Bond. I know I keep saying that over and over again, but if there's one thing I really, really love about this movie, another thing I love about this movie, it's the supporting cast. Draco. He was probably, I always have, I would call Draco easily one of Bond's best allies. I mean, he's actually his father-in-law. Now I think about it, he really is his father-in-law. Never really thought about that. Besides the point, Draco makes this deal with James Bond, or James Bond makes a deal with Draco, better yet. Draco wants, James Bond. He knows that, he saved Contessa's life. He knows what's going on. He believes that James Bond is the answer to getting Tracy to kind of calm down, or try and save her, and try to, tame her, if you will. And, because she needs a man in her life and such. And, Bond's like, well, I live the bachelor lifestyle, obviously, and I really, really enjoy it. And Draco says, well, stupido. And, Bond says, but you do have connections that I don't, and you might know where a certain character named Ernst Stavro Blofeld is. Blofeld? Huh. And, he actually does have a lead on Blofeld's location if he dates/marries his daughter, Contessa. And Draco, he's man, I just really love everything about this actor, or about this character. He's really when you look at it, yes, leads one of the bigger crime syndicates, just below Spectre. But is he a villain? Maybe sometimes he is, but he just wants what's best for his daughter. And, how he goes about it, maybe not the best way. I'll pay you a million rubies, or a million gold, a million, I think it was rubies. And, if you marry my daughter. And, James Bond, he's probably thinking in the back of his mind, okay, you know what? Because it's been 2 years since and I haven't had like any solid lead on Ernst Stavro Blofeld. You know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to humor him. And if something comes out of it, so be it. And that's exactly what happens. But, Tracy's on to her father. You know what, Papa, I know how you are. And pretty much, it ends up there. That's where the love story really begins. And, the song We Have All the Time in the World, played by Louis Armstrong, a great, great Bond song. And, I would say that this isn't your typical James Bond song that you would have heard in a Sean Connery movie. As a matter of fact, I would probably question, why didn't they use this in the opening sequence? Well, I don't think it would have worked. I think that I think how they started off with the On Her Majesty's Secret Service theme worked out better. Having two themes in this movie probably worked out best. And, like I said, you hear the love, I would call it the love theme, the Tracy and James Bond love theme. It is, we have all the time in the world, and that is actually their motto, or their phrase. Another thing about this is less gadgets in this movie. Aside from the safecracker copy machine, I would say that there aren't many gadgets in here. I would say it's more of a grounded James Bond. You kind of have to after, you have a movie like You Only Live Twice where space shuttles are being, or spacecraft, spaceships are being, from the United States and USSR, are being stolen, and, a war is being, you have the underground volcano layer. Instead, here you have something. It makes a little bit more sense. Okay, we're going to be doing, Blofeld. We're still going to have Blofeld, but he's in hiding. We're going to kind of pretend that, Bond and Blofeld have never met. That's kind of hard to wrap, I guess probably for most of the audience, who don't follow James Bond as much, or maybe some people who say, well, isn't this a sequel, You Only Live Twice? Not exactly. It's just this is if they had never met, and we're just going to pretend kind of like that part never happened, like the third act of that movie where Bond and Blofeld, or Donald Pleasance's Blofeld met. It didn't happen. So this is really the first time that Bond is aware of Blofeld. Blofeld is aware of James Bond, but I'm assuming that Blofeld has never actually seen James Bond, or he did a really good job pretending to act like he had no idea that he was Sir Hilary Bray. Now, who's Sir Hilary Bray? What brings Bond all the way up to with this lead to where Blofeld is that Blofeld is trying to become a count. He's using this name, Count Balthasar de Bluchamp. It's a French form of Blofeld, which Bond picks up. And the colleges of arms, or he's writing to the College of Arms that they recognize him as a count. So what does Bond do? He does a little undercover work. We've seen Bond do undercover work before, but this is a little different. This is a little different. So he's changed his accent in this. He's not dressing like James Bond anymore. He's acting like anything but James Bond when he meets, when he goes to Piz Gloria. He's wearing glasses, he's wearing a hat, he's acting like he's afraid of everything, he's acting like he has air sickness, and how he's not into sports, he's smoking a pipe, and then all of a sudden you see James Bond going to dinner, Sir Hilary, in air quotes, and he's wearing a kilt. That's right, James Bond is now at a point where he's wearing a kilt. I'm not exactly sure why, but you know what? If there's anybody that could rock it, I would say George Lazenby was, definitely was able to rock it. Could Sean Connery rock it? Could Roger Moore? I would give Sean Connery. I think Sean Connery could have rocked it. I don't know if Roger Moore could have, or maybe Pierce. Daniel Craig, I definitely couldn't see wearing this. This is one of those small instances where I would say George Lazenby gets two martinis up, or two thumbs up, if you will, because he looked pretty cool in that kilt. I, for one, I don't know if I could ever pull that off. Besides the point, though, he tricks when he's at dinner. It turns out that Piz Gloria it's called the Bluchamp Institute for Allergy Research. So what this place is, it's up in Switzerland, up in the mountains, all the way up. It's it's heavily guarded, and this allergy research is they're curing all types of allergies. Well, like I said, this isn't your typical James Bond. There isn't he's not launching a nuclear weapon. He's not stealing other, he's not stealing nuclear warheads or anything like that. He's not stealing space shuttles, spaceships. This is, like I said, this is more of a grounded James Bond, and I like that. So what ends up happening is that Blofeld, stumbles on and realizes that Bond, even though he acted like he didn't, he acted like he was, Sir Hilary Bray. Blofeld spotted a mile away. Blofeld knows that he slept around with a couple of the girls that, or some of the beauties that, the Blofeld beauties, I guess, if you will. and who he's cured of their allergies, and he knows that who James Bond is, and he's Merry Christmas 007, as you heard in the clip. This ends up being Blofeld reveals his plan about bacteriological warfare. And he's saying about, you remember the outbreak in, I guess it was in UK and such, and he was responsible for that. And what his plan is the destruction of the human race using this virus Omega. And, no, not the watch. And, I really like this idea because, like I said, this is not I wouldn't say it's a far-fetched idea to have something like this, and it could even exist to this day, wiping out the human race and sending these girls with whatever they have to, spread this virus, and all over the world and these are not just like maybe a couple girls, you're talking about like maybe, I'd say probably 15 that we know, that we actually see in the movie. Then there could be even more. And he's tricked them, and he's kind of brainwashed them in a sense. They're aware of what's going on, but they're not aware that they've been brainwashed of when Blofeld's talking to him, saying, he's, like I said, what these sleep studies or with curing these allergies, what he's really, really doing. Like I said, I really like this. I like this Blofeld, Telly Savalas. He might actually now be my favorite Blofeld. I would have said Donald Pleasance a while back. Just goodbye, Mr. Bond. But this Blofeld is just like, I don't know. He's maybe not just the physicality of him, but just his acting. How he really, I guess, played off of George Lazenby so well. And like I said, if there's anything that really works about this movie, one of the top things that works about this movie is it's the supporting cast. Not only do you have a Bond girl who can, who's really great with her acting and such, you have Draco, who's amazing, and you have Telly Savalas playing Blofeld, and you have Kojak playing Blofeld. That's a throwback right there, even though I've never watched the show. And so many great things about this. The skiing, we have to talk about the skiing. All right, so like I said at the beginning of the show, James Bond has never been on film skiing before, and I think what Peter Hunt maybe tried to do with this. Sorry, my dog's playing with her toy. I think what Peter Hunt was trying to do, in a sense, is, kind of when Bond puts on the blue ski suit and he puts on the goggles, and then you kind of hear it in the music. John Barry they played it up so well with him, putting on the skis, and it's like, oh, guess what? We're about to see 007 do. He's about to do not just skiing, nighttime skiing in Switzerland, and that's probably another one of the greatest things about this movie is the like I said, the cinematography, the ski chases in this, where it's not just one ski chase. I'd say there's at least two, I think, in this. Anyway, and there they go again. Like I said, the cinematography with this, I'm kind of skipping ahead here. The avalanche in here, the one of my favorite scenes. And it happens. It's not too fast, but it's near the end when Bond is going to Piz Gloria. He's disobeying M's orders, and he's riding with Draco in two helicopters with Draco's men, and they're about to go save Tracy and take down Blofeld. And you're seeing them in these helicopters. Actually, it's 3 helicopters, and you see this incredibly beautiful. It's not a sunset. It's a sunrise. Actually, is it sunset? Damn it! I think it's actually sunset. Because I remember Blofeld saying to Tracy, "Oh, they have all the way up until midnight to meet my demands," and which would be amnesty, because they were going to, instead of giving Blofeld money, they're just going to wipe out his record and recognize him as a count. Snobbery. It's an interesting thing, as M said. Anyway, that scene with the helicopters and such, oh, it's so good. And then you get into the pit where at Piz Gloria, I call it the Piz Gloria Assault. Monty Norman, James Bond theme, cranked up on high, played twice, and oh, wow. Now, last time I think we heard the James Bond Monty Norman theme was in You Only Live Twice when Little Nelly was. But, it was such a great throwback, it really worked. And we heard the James Bond theme, in a sense, very lightly throughout this movie, is more on Her Majesty's Secret Service theme. But whoever, I guess it was John Barry that decided this. You know what? Let's go back. Let's put in the Monty Norman James Bond theme, and it worked out so well for this. The Bond moment. You have a Bond moment in here, which I'll save because it was one of the listeners' favorite moments. Going from Blofeld to Bond. This was all the Piz Gloria scenes were great, especially the assault in Piz Gloria. But when it comes down to it, the battle between Blofeld and Bond, something I think. Well, I mean, obviously, I'm a child of the '80s, so I wouldn't have known what it was like to have that build up, from the very beginning, or all the way from Russia with Love, of seeing Blofeld in the background, stroking the white cat, and yes, the white cat does return in this. Hello, pussy, and but at the same time, it's all this build-up has been to Blofeld. And when it came down to You Only Live Twice, you had even more build-up because you knew that we actually did get a chance to see Blofeld. We got to see Donald Pleasance's Blofeld, but we got to see, I think, maybe a total of 15 to 20 minutes of him at most, and he really didn't do anything except just talk a good talk. With this, I would say that Blofeld, Telly Savalas Blofeld, he battled James Bond, and this might have been one of James Bond's. This is the James Bond villain at the time, and the bobsled fight was so good. Yeah, every time I see the bobsled chase, I really get excited, and I'm just like, man, what a great fight sequence. I mean, you have a gun battle, you have a fist fight, and you have a chase going on a bobsled chase going on at the same time, and it's happening so fast. How they cut it and how they edited it was so well. I haven't even had a chance to talk about Q, Moneypenny, and M. Bernard Lee returned as M. Louise Maxwell returned as Moneypenny, and Desmond Llewellyn returned as Q. Like I said, actually, I think you see more of them in this movie, or at least of M and Moneypenny. And like I said, George Lazenby being the new guy, you have the old crew in there, but it works so well. The setting of M's office is darker. M seems like he's a lot more pissed off with Bond in this, and I like it a lot. Operation Bedlam is dead. Do you understand? Yes, sir. I understand. And it just, Louise Maxwell still has that flirty thing going on with Bond, and even though George Lazenby is my favorite Bond, I would say there was still some chemistry there. I guess he knew how to woo a lady. The biggest thing about this Bond movie that makes it so different from every other one, and then kind of, I guess, changed the course of history for James Bond, and it's always brought up every once in a while, or it was at least all the way up until the world is not enough, I think. Because Electra said, have you ever lost a loved one? Anyway, James Bond does marry Tracy. He decides, he's going to leave the Secret Service. He's going to, he doesn't want to do this anymore. He said, I'll have to find something else. I'll have to find something else to do. And, he ends up really marrying her. We only see after the wedding reception, yet it had M, Moneypenny, Q. Obviously, Draco's there with his men, and it's a beautifully shot scene, and it's kind of sad because I guess maybe at the way they were thinking this, well, we don't know if this is the last James Bond. It probably isn't, but we're just going to act like it is because, Bernard or Q is just saying, James, I know we haven't always gotten along, yada yada yada, and but I'm quite proud of you, my boy, and Bond's like, this time, Q, I have all the gadgets and I know how to use them. And, it's just kind of like, he waves to Moneypenny. He throws the hat one more time. It's like, this would have been a great send-off for James Bond. It almost kind of felt like it would have been a great send-off for Sean Connery if he would have been this Bond film. But I got to be honest, I don't think Sean Connery, Sean Connery would have continued and You Only Live Twice into this Bond movie, I don't think it would have worked with the emotion. That's not the kind of Bond movie I guess we would have expected from Sean Connery because it's George Lazenby. They were trying something different, and with everything, looking at everything, I would say it worked. The ending to this movie, it was such a cliffhanger because obviously we know Tracy was killed, and I know it actually a lot of people probably think, oh, it was Blofeld that killed her. It was actually Boone. Yeah, it was his right hand lady, and she's actually the one firing the rifle at her that kills Tracy. And it's such a sad moment. And he's like, he just got married. He's in the Aston Martin on the side of the road, and then he's just, it's okay. We'll be moving on soon. See, we have all the time in the world. And he starts crying, and then and that's the end of the movie. It's like, wow, what a cliffhanger this had to have been, especially in 1969. James Bond just got married, but guess what? His wife is dead, just murdered right after he got married. Wow, how are they going to bring Bond back? We'll never know. Yeah, sadly, we'll never know, because Diamonds Are Forever was the one that happened after this, but I don't want to get into that. Looking at this, I would say the only dislike I would say is George Lazenby. Probably in the last year or so, I would say that, I've grown. He's grown on me, I guess, because I've started to watch Under Majesty's Secret Service more, and I come to enjoy it. Does he nail every line? He makes me chuckle. I have fun with his Bond. Gatecrasher. His humor, it kind of works. Sometimes it didn't. And, I would say that I guess what always gave me mixed feelings about his Bond was that, he lied. Bottom line is he lied to get this part, and I would say that it just, I guess it rubbed me the wrong way that he lied just to get this. He had no experience whatsoever, but you know what? Maybe, if who knows? Maybe some listeners out there can sympathize with him, saying, you know what? We would do anything to be cast as James Bond. And you know what? I won't say I wouldn't do anything for that. Maybe at a time I would have said, you know what? I would have loved to be James Bond. I'll work out as much as it takes. I'll do 3 workouts a day. And you know what? I'll lie my ass off to the producers to get this role. And you know what? It's kind of a shame that Lazenby didn't, things didn't work out with Lazenby, that he didn't return. Because I one of the things I would have loved to seen with this, that I always wish, what if, is, what would happen if Bond went after Blofeld? What a sequel to this movie would have looked like. I don't think we're ever going to know. The closest thing we might have to that is No Time to Die, which comes out in 2020. We'll see. All right, so while we're running very short on time, I will say that some of the listeners, Robert Sterling, Universal Exports Online, said one of his favorite moments is Escape from Piz Gloria. Love the music and the skiing. Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. The skiing is always great in this, and the music that goes with it. That dun 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 dun. This is from Bamf F Style. He says the opening sequence from Bond's intro when he lights his cigarette behind the wheel right up to "This never happened to the other fella." And number 2, when he jumps from the helicopter and slides up the ice firing the submachine gun at Blofeld's baddies. Yeah, it happens so fast when he shoots at the bad guys, but it's such a Bond moment. That would be one of his biggest Bond moments, aside from after he fights the bad guy in Tracy's hotel room and eats some caviar, and he says beluga or whatever he said. Anyway, I would say I would give this movie a 4 out of 5. I'm so borderline about giving it a 5. I'm gonna change my rating system. As of right now, I'm gonna break my own rules. I'm gonna break my one and only rule. Yes, Joker, I am. I'm gonna rate this a 4.8 out of 5. And love to know what you guys have to think about this. I almost feel like watching this movie again. And before because it's a Christmas movie, I have an excuse saying, "Hey, I want to get in the holiday spirit." Well, sort of, because it's a James Bond movie and it's during Christmas. And you know what? I have a feeling I will be watching this movie again soon, within the next week, because we're only a week away from Christmas. So that's going to wrap it up for this episode of The Night Cave. Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to subscribe to the show on iTunes and Spreaker and share the show with your friends. Follow me on all the various social media networks, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at The Night Cave. Like James Bond, I will return. I'll try to have an episode out within the next 2 weeks, so I will say happy holidays to everybody. Happy New Year if I don't get a chance to record again. But like James Bond, I will return. It'll probably be, the next new episode will probably be in January. So just want to say, guys, thanks for sticking around. Thank you for listening last week. And we're trying to get more in a groove for 2020. So thank you so much. Thanks for listening, and have a great week, everyone, and a happy holiday and Happy New Year. Bye-bye.